Well, hello and welcome to the latest in our series of Choice Words videos where we get to talk to key decision makers in the world of fund selection, fund research. I'm Julian Marr, Editorial Director of Wealthwise Media, and today I'm delighted to be talking to Ned Group Investments Head of Multi-Manager, Rob Burdett. Hi, Rob.
Hi, Julian. Good to be here.
That's very sweet of you to say so. So the aim of this little chat, and because I'm still doing the first few ones, I'm going to read this out so I get this right, to find out a bit about how you think about life, both within the wonderful world of investment and outside it, what brought you into the sector and what keeps you here, and then what makes you tick and what makes the business you work for tick. So obviously, absolute walk in the park, and in that vein, we'll start with a nice, easy question. What excites you about the current investment outlook, and what causes you any concern?
I think one of the most interesting things about the current market is there's a genuine cost of capital now with interest rates having risen and with the volatility and expectations for rate cuts or otherwise. And that, I think, creates opportunities for decent returns, whatever your style, whatever market you're in. So I think it's after the 15 years or so post GFC of zero to negative rates, I think this is the most exciting thing about markets right now.
There was no way, yes, because there was no penalty for making mistakes, was it? You just go out and buy, but you make a bad decision. Oh, it's gone wrong, and now I go out and I get more money, and then we try again. Whereas this time it raises the stakes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Better news for active managers.
Definitely. Yeah.
Fingers crossed. That would be nice. I'm going to be happily displaying my biases in these videos as well, I should be saying. And then, okay, well, that given you have this wonderful panoply of choices, is going to set you apart from the crowd now. What do you most look for in an investment, and what do you see as red flags?
So I think when we're looking for a fund manager, both in them and also so that we understand the fund and manager ourselves, is either an individual or a team that's found a way of running money that works for them. We don't think there's a right or wrong way, but good managers work out something that works for them, and it's up to us to know what they need for that to persist, be it the team they're with, the market conditions, the amount of money they're running. These are the things that we look for. In terms of red flags, I think if there's a lack of humility, that's a little bit of a warning sign. That could be quite mild. It could be focusing on what I would call career risk, relative returns and peer group rankings, rather than the absolute loss of capital and making money over the long term in absolute terms.
This is unfair, and maybe we'll edit it out, but with no names basis, what's the most egregious lack of humility you've come across in your decades in this business?
I suppose when I first met Anthony Bolton, I was rude enough to ask him how many decisions he got right. He answered between 55 and 60%, which I thought was low, but has been borne out by other great managers since then. And it's running the winners and cutting the losers that makes sense. I've met managers who claim they're getting like 80 to 90% of their decisions right, and that's quite egregious in my view.
It's amazing because you think they'd show up in the performance charts with that level of hit rate, and they'd be okay. Well, that's good to know.
They do fleetingly.
That's the way of looking at it. Trying to draw a distinction between traditional investments, cash, equities, bonds, and non-traditional investments, I agree with the opposite of that. So what degree do you think professional investors should be looking beyond those ones, and to what? I mean, I'm giving you a wide panoply of choice, but what would you pick out?
Well, I think we are an industry that innovates, or at least attempts to, and I think it's our duty as participants to keep abreast of those opportunities and work out which ones are genuinely adding to our choice. And I guess for me, investing in absolute return funds pre and during the GFC in 2007 was before the IA sector existed. UCITS 3 rules were quite new. That was useful to us through that time. We had positive returns in a very significant negative year, probably the most significant negative year in my career. But from that, arguably, the GARS sort of bandwagon appeared, and that was something to be avoided, clearly, and thankfully we did. But I think, so you have to take care, but certainly I want to embrace innovation when it's appropriate.
And is there anything you're particularly thinking about at the moment as you look ahead at the next 12 months?
I think active ETFs is an area where we'll see some interesting further developments. There's obviously some big participants in Europe at the moment that haven't really gained traction in the UK, and it's a bit chicken and egg there. But that I think allows for a lot of the settlement issues that are archaic in the funds industry to be got rid of. It allows more price and timing perfection as well, and avoids things like market timing of fund of funds and things like that as well.
Does it clear up brain space? You make that's my general bet, and then I can get to play around the edges. Is that how you think about it?
Well, I think it's almost a bit more than that. It sort of could be the wholesale move of fund management into the ETF structure, but that's a long way off, I think, because there's too many vested interests in avoiding that happening too fast.
We'll get back. We'll have a different one. We'll have a different series called Vested Interests further down the line. But let's all play nice at the beginning of Wealthwise Media. Client communications is so important, whether that be with the advisors you're creating solutions for, or the end clients. I've been hearing more and more chat about getting the right type of client, which I suppose on one level sounds a bit entitled, but on the other, I think it is important because it gets drills the idea of managing clients' expectations properly. So, what drives your approach to client comms, and should professional investors aim or set out to attract the right type of client?
I think good communication solves and avoids problems, and bad communication creates them. So I think it's got to be at the root of what we do, and we're an industry that looks complex, that is overweight acronyms and anagrams.
Wait, you might be right. Acronyms, anachronisms and acronyms. We'll there's an anachronistic industry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've just created
new word. Yeah,
more jargon in an overweight industry of jargon. So I clearly need to work on my communication. But I think educating clients in the basics of investing is often forgotten, and we go down a rabbit hole of complexity that we don't need to, and I think we can be better than that.
Okey-doke. Bit more personal, what was your path into investment? And the alternative reality question, if you hadn't gone into investment, what would you be doing now?
So I did economics at A-level, and as part of that we did a competition called Stockpiler. It was sponsored by Williams and Glyn's Bank, and you got 50,000 fictitious pounds to invest and swap it once a month. And our little set of six of us, we really enjoyed that, and it became our focus rather than economics. And we came 8th out of 2,000 schools. I've still got my Parker pen as sort of my mojo. Keep it close by just in case. That's really what got me into it. And then fortuitously, there was, for the first time in I think about 15 years, a job as a trainee stockbroker, as they called them then, in the only wealth manager in my hometown. So I was desperate to get that job and was lucky enough to get it.
And in the alternative universe, what would you, if you hadn't gone down that route?
So when I was at school, I'm sure many of us went through a software package that's supposed to predict your career and so on. And in my case, it did say stockbroker, but architect, which is a slightly left field. But I do have a bit of an interest in modern architecture and so on. So maybe there is some merit in that. I don't know, but they've probably been saved from me, to be honest.
Okay, I think we'll get there'll be another series now, Grand Designs, but with you. But that's it. Yes, are you in architecture? That's right, or open architecture perhaps. Are you prepared to admit to the biggest investment mistake you've made and what you've learned from it? I think we should have a positive aspect to that.
Okay, so my career has mostly been investing in funds. The prospect of zero loss or zero return is mercifully rare, and zero for me. No fund's ever gone to zero. But I think COVID was one of the harshest lessons. In all the previous major collapses, multi-manager funds I've been lucky enough to be involved with outperformed, and that's one of the virtues I hope multi-manager gives you, but not the case in COVID. And learning how correlations come in, how already extreme interest rates can go further, was a difficult but harsh lesson. And it was March 2020 was a brutal month for, diversification didn't work. value didn't work. That's like your whole portfolio and another half of it sort of gone missing in action when you need it. So I've tried to learn about trends, valuations, paying attention to how governments address the stimulus they put in around those markets, which I thought I'd learned from the GFC, but clearly not.
Well, you're going to have a little refresher. That's all fine. I don't know why I asked this question, but except that I love it, and one day I'm going to get a great answer to it in return. But I've had to qualify it. So this is outside of work, so you're not allowed to see, say, the GFC or anything like that. But outside of work, what is the strangest thing that you've ever seen or done?
I think it has to be spending 18 days in a Reliant Robin with my business partner, driving around the coastline of mainland Great Britain. 4,500 miles at close quarters was quite strange, but ultimately rewarding in terms of our faith in human nature from the extraordinary generosity we saw in spirit and hard cash on that journey.
Because that was a charitable endeavour for Cascade, wasn't it? With Gary Potter.
Yeah.
I know. Clearly, I'm assuming there's an Only Fools and Horses, but why did you decide to rob and ride? I can't remember.
It was a long. It started with there's something called. There's a tuk-tuk challenge in India that we looked at, and Gary felt Delhi Belly was too high on the risk threshold, and that's been rebranded now, hasn't it? But so we looked at tuk-tuks around the UK, and then thought the next silliest thing, because tuk-tuks are quite hard to come by and they've got quite a lot of restrictions on them, as should have a Reliant Robin, in my experience. Lethal in the wrong hands. That was Gary's hands in this case.
You know, that was just
potentially lethal.
That was assumed. Right, best and worst case scenario, not for you driving around the UK with Gary, but for the future of wealth in the UK. Let's start with the worst case, and when we move to we can at least finish on a high.
I guess the worst case is probably easy to say, but is the race to the bottom on fees and the short-termism around investment performance.
Sure.
If I can have two. And I guess the best outcome is perhaps the reverse of that we start to see value, not price, emerge. That's difficult with things like value assessment being annualised. It's part of the problem of short-termism, and I think we run the risk of investors continuously digging up the plant before the roots have taken hold and moving into what looks the right thing that turns out again to be about to go through a dip. So that would be my hope, but we're in a difficult place for short-termism and the race to bottom on fees at the moment.
Thank you for that. Last question. You are here because of the choices you make in a professional context, but there's a personal one. Your two recommendations, for our viewers. Perhaps a book recommendation and one a free choice, like podcast, movie, holiday destination.
So for the book, a good industry friend who you may well have on this broadcast at some point gave me a recommendation for a book called Quit when I left my last job. It's by Annie Duke, and she is a world poker champion, and it's basically a series of analysis on real life scenarios where we as humans tend to quit too late, and that's on reading a bad book, it's on an investment, it could be on a relationship or a job, and there's some really good lessons in there, I think, around investing and life, so I definitely commend that to the house. The second one would be a US fund manager once came over and was sort of ecstatic about a musical called Hamilton.
Right.
I'm not generally a fan of the sort of Andrew Lloyd Webber sort of musical genre, but I took my daughter to see Hamilton, and she was a dancer, or passionate about dance, and it changed her mind about musicals. She was similar to me, and what they could be. It's full of energy, it's really vibrant, you learn a bit of history. We've ended up seeing it 3 times, so if you do or don't like musicals, I'd say Hamilton.
Do you know, I wasn't expecting that, which is, we talk football, we talk, we talk cricket, various other things, but there you go. But that's the point, is to get to things, they get to the unexpected outcome. And on Annie Duke, she is just a genius on so many levels, poker, writing, management consultancy. So yeah, top choices, Rob. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for talking to us today.
Pleasure.
And thank you, of course, so much for watching. Please do look out for further Choice Words videos in this series.